There was a smell of burnt metal and ozone in the workshop. As Jack Miller wiped grease off his hands, sparks danced in the dim light. He was looking at the huge cargo container that had just arrived. His workshop was on the edge of Mutura Station, which is a human outpost in the neutral zone between 6 alien territories. Jax had a reputation that spread across 3-star system in this messy maze of workbenches and all technology. People called him the ghost whisperer of gears. Jax looked older than 32. His brown hair had gray streaks in it, and his hands were covered in scars from 1,000 repairs. But his green eyes still had that spark of curiosity that had driven him since he was a kid and took apart his father's communicator just to see how it worked. "Okay, let's see what you've brought me," Jack said, quietly as he pressed his palm against the lock panel on the container. The doors hissed open, letting out a cloud of preservation vapor. When it cleared, Jack's breath caught in his throat. There were pieces of something amazing inside. The crystalline conduits pulsed with a faint, dying light like the last heartbeat of a star that was about to die. The workshop lights bounced off of metal alloys he'd never seen before in the strange colors. He could only imagine what secrets were hidden in the data shards, the size of his fist that floated in fields of suspending animation. This wasn't just any old salvage. These were parts of Xylosian Warship. Jax had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy did. 3,000 years ago, the Xylosians disappeared. They left behind technology that was so advanced that it looked like magic. The Galactic Coalition called their warships God Tier, which means they could change the course of whole wars with just one shot. There had only ever been 5. Treasure hunters who didn't know what they were touching had destroyed 4 of them. 200 years ago, the 5th one went into black hole. Up until now. "Carter!" Jax yelled to the back of the workshop. "Come in here." A young woman with short black hair came out from behind a huge pile of engine parts. Sarah Carter, who was 24 years old and very smart, was Jake's apprentice. 2 years ago, she had come to him because she wanted to learn from the best. "What is it?" Sarah asked. And then she stopped dead and she saw the box. "Oh my God, I think that's what it is." Yes, if we're thinking about parts of Xylosian warships, Jax moved closer, his engineer's mind already racing with ideas. The manifest says this is only about 8% of the original ship. If it exists at all, the rest is spread out across the outer rim. Sarah moved next to him, her eyes wide with amazement. "Jax, this can't be done. No one has ever been able to fix Xylosian technology. The structure of the molecules is too complicated. The energy system works on ideas that we don't even have the names for." "I know." Jax reached out and slightly touched one of the crystal conduits. It felt warm, like it was alive, under his fingers. "But Sarah, look at this. Look at this closely. This ship didn't just sink. It went through something terrible. This ship fought something terrible and lost. Look at these scorch marks and the way the metal is ripped." He turned to face her and pulled his hand back. "The coalition gave me choice 3 months ago. They would give me these parts and as many resources as I needed to study them. If I can fix even a small part of this ship system, humanity will get a seat on the Galactic Council in return." Sarah's mouth dropped open. "They're paying us off with alien technology?" Jack said. "They're testing us. All the major species in the galaxy have tried and failed to open up Xylosian technology. If we succeed, we show that people are part of the advanced civilization. If we fail, we're just another species that can fix things but not make them." "And you said yes?" There was both admiration and worry in Sarah's voice. Jack smiled, and the familiar fire in his chest came back. "I said yes, because people have always told me what I can't do. 3 certified engineers said that a Krallian quantum drive was dead when I was 12. I rebuilt the Crash Venari scout ship when I was 20, using only spare parts and my own determination." He turned back to the parts, and his voice got louder. Sarah, this isn't just about getting a seat on the council. This is about showing that human intelligence, determination, and creativity can compete with any other species in the galaxy. We may not have been showing that in space for as long as the others. We might not have fancy genetic changes or live for 1,000 years, but we have something they don't. What is that? Sarah asked in soft voice. We never give up trying. We never accept that something can't be fixed, made better, or understood. That's what makes us who we are. Jax took out his datapad and started scanning things. Yes, I'm doing the impossible. Impossible is just a word people use when they don't want to work hard enough. That same spark of determination lit up Sarah's eyes. When do we begin? Right now. We will have to list every piece, do molecular scans, and map the energy signatures. This will take a long time, maybe even years. But when we're done, he stopped for a moment. Think about what this broken god could turn into. When we're done, we'll have given people something very valuable. Not just a weapon, but proof that we are part of stars. The workshop was full of light as night fell on the new Terra station. Jax and Sarah worked in the dark, carefully taking out each part and treating the old technology with the respect it deserved. The crystalline tubes made strange shadows on the walls, and the data shards hummed with the information that was not yet used. There was a secret to coming back to the life in those pieces, and Jax Miller, the ghost whispers of gears, was set on finding it. It had been 6 weeks since the parts arrived, and Jack's workshop now looked like a high-tech archaeological site. Holographic displays hung in the air and showed 3-dimensional scans of each piece. There were notes, equations, and diagrams all over the walls that would have looked like a madness to anyone else. They were beginning to make sense to Jax. Computer, overlay scan 73 Alpha with the crystal metric spectrum, Jax said, looking at a picture of one of the conduits that was floating in the air. The AI in the workshop did what it was told, and all of a sudden, the conduit that looked like it was all over the place showed a pattern. It was amazing, a mathematical sequence that twisted it on itself, with each level getting harder. It's fractal, Sarah said softly from her desk. Fractal geometry is the basis for the whole energy distribution system. That's why it works so well. Every part of the system is a perfect copy of the whole, but on a smaller scale. Jax nodded and quickly wrote down what he heard. That means that if we can figure out how one part works, we should be able to figure out how the whole ship works. The Zylosians didn't make random parts. They made a system where every part is a part of the whole. He went to a different display, this one showing pieces of the hull. The alien metal was not like anything in the human database. It was stronger than diamond, but lighter than titanium, and it looked like it was trying to protect itself from damage. He had tested it with plasma torch, and the metal had recently absorbed the heat and spread it out over the whole surface. Adaptive armor, Jack said softly. It doesn't just protect itself, it learns from damage. Every hit makes it stronger in that area. No way, Sarah said. That's not how material science works. Metal doesn't learn. Zylosian metal does. Jax opened a microscopic scan. Check out the structure of the molecules. There are nanomachines inside the alloy itself that most scanners can't see. They talk to each other and share information about stress points and damage. It's not just armor. It's a living defense system. Sarah joined him and looked at the scan with more and more amazement. Every ship in the human fleet would be changed forever if we could do this again. One step at a time, Jack said. We need to understand it first. Next, we need to figure out how to fix it without breaking those tiny machines. Then we can think about making copies. He walked over to the workshop's biggest table, where he had put the data shards. They were turning out to be the hardest. The energy readings made it clear that each shard held information. But to get to that information, you had to know a computer language that was 3,000 years old and made by an alien intelligence. Is there any progress on the translation algorithm? Jax wanted to know. Sarah shook her head. and her voice showed how angry she was. I've tried 17 different ways. The way the language is put together doesn't fit any known pattern. It's not binary, quantum, or even based on the math we know. Jax picked up one of the pieces and felt how heavy it was in his hand. It was always warm, as if something inside was still working. What if we're going about this the wrong way? We're trying to understand this as if it were a language. But what if it isn't? What else could it be? A memory? Jax said slowly, and the idea came to him as he spoke. Think about it. The Zylocians used fractal patterns to build everything. In these patterns, the part reflects the whole. What if the way they store data is the same? There is no language in these shards. They were real memories, experiences, and sensory data from the ship itself. Sarah's eyes got wider. You mean the ship was alive? Not consciousness as we know it, but definitely some kind of intelligence. These aren't plans. They're memories of how the ship worked. Jax carefully put the shard down. That means we don't need to translate them. We need to go through them. That's not safe, Sarah said. Directly interfacing with alien technology that we don't know about, you could hurt the pathways in your brain. You could go crazy. Or I could get it, Jax said in response. That is why they gave me this job, Sarah. Not because I'm the best engineer, though I am pretty good, he said with a smile, but only because I'm willing to take risks that other people won't. He worked on the interface for the next 3 days. It was a fragile piece of equipment that used both human neural mapping technology and carefully changed alien parts. Sarah watched him work with both admiration and fear, knowing that once he turned it on, there was no way to know if he could come back and the same person. Jax was ready on the 4th day. He sat in the chair that had been changed just for him, with monitors all around him keeping an eye on his vital signs. The neural interference was cool metal against his temple. He held the largest data shard in his hands. It had the strongest energy signature and pulsed. Sarah, if something goes wrong, she cut in. I know. Disconnect right away. Get your vitals stable and call Dr. Chen. I can handle this, Jax. Just be careful in there. Jax grinned. Careful is my middle name. Robert is your real middle name. Details. He took a deep breath and turned on the interface. The world burst into feeling. Jax was no longer in his workshop all of a sudden. He was huge and strong, covering kilometers of space. He could feel solar winds brushing against his hull and gravity wells millions of kilometers away. He was moving through the void at speeds that would have ripped apart any human ship, but to him, it felt like swimming through water. He had guns, a lot of them, energy cannons that could break planets, missile arrays that never missed, and defensive shields that bent space itself. But he had more than that. He had a goal. He was a guardian and a protector, watching over worlds he couldn't quite remember. The attack came next. Something big and bad broke through his shields like paper. Weapon that shouldn't exist burned through his armor that changed shape. He did everything he could to fight back, but it wasn't enough. The systems broke down. Some crew members died. He felt every loss like a cut on his body. As physical damage spread through his core in his last moments, he felt only one thing: sadness, not for himself, but because he hadn't done his duty and couldn't protect the worlds anymore. And then there was darkness. Jack's eyes flew open and he gasped. He was back in the workshop, his heart racing and sweat pouring down his face. Sarah was next to him, checking his vital signs. Hey Jax, are you all right? You were out for the almost 3 hours. 3 hours? It felt like it had been years, like thousands of years of time in a few short moments. I saw it, Jax said in the hoarse voice. Sarah, I saw it all. This wasn't just a ship for wars. It was living. It had a goal, a mission. It died fighting for something or against something that scared it. He slowly sat up, still trying to make sense of what had happened. I know how to fix it. I know the plan now. Not on paper, but in my head. He hit his head. I could feel how everything was connected, how the energy flowed, and how it all worked together. It's not just building things, it's art. The Zylocians did not make machines. They made technology into symphonies. Sarah helped him stand by holding him steady when he swayed. What do we do now? Jack saw the parts scattered around his workshop in a new way. Each piece was a note in a big song. Every system was a line in an epic poem. He, Jack Miller, was going to be the conductor who brought it back to life. Now, he smiled and felt more determined than ever. Now it's time to get to work. I know what kind of ship this was, and I'm going to make sure it can be that way again. The real work started at dawn. Jack stood in front of his newly expanded workspace, which now took up 3 connected bays on the new train station. The coalition kept their word. They gave me the unlimited resources. The rooms were full of specialized tools like molecular forges, quantum welders, gravitational manipulators, and dozens of the other tools that Jack had made himself based on what he had learned from the interface. Sarah, get me the main conduit section, Jack yelled, as he put on gloves made of woven carbon ceramic fiber. Sarah carefully moved the anti-gravity platform, which had a crystalline conduit floating just above its surface. Even when it was not moving, it made strange reflections by bending lights in the ways that shouldn't be possible. Where do you want it? On the main bench. We're going to begin with the network for disturbing energy. It's the most important thing. Jack pulled down his magnification visor, which let him see the bigger picture while working on a very small scale. There were 17 places where the conduit was broken. Most of the breaks were clean, which suggests that the energy overload was so bad that it caused physical damage. But 3 parts looked like they were corrupt, as if the crystal structure itself had been poisoned. This is interesting, Jack said quietly as he looked at one of the broken parts. Whatever attacked the ship did more than just hurt it. It somehow got into it and tried to use its own systems against it. Can you fix it? Sarah asked. 6? No. I can't just put these pieces back together with glue. Jack turned on the molecular forge, a huge machine that could change matter at the atomic level. I need to grow it again. These crystals don't just carry energy, they grow, just like living tissues. The Zalortians would have had seeds for the organic crystals. We don't, so I have to get a crystal that is already there to heal itself. He spent the next 6 hours carefully adding nanocatalysts to the damaged area. These substances would help the crystal grow back. It was hard work. The crystal would grow in a random way if there was too much catalyst, making it useless. If there wasn't enough, nothing would happen. But Jax knew how the ship worked. He knew how its systems worked and how its energy flowed. His hands moved with confidence, guided by a mix of memory and intuition. The crystal started to grow slowly, but not at all. Sarah was amazed to see blue-white light threads coming from the parts that were still there. Reaching across the gaps to touch each, Sarah was amazed. When they came together, they fused and made new crystals that just looked like the old ones. The damaged parts were harder to fix because Jax had to carefully burn away the damaged material before new growth could start. By nightfall, the main pipe was whole again. Test it, Jack said, stepping back. His hands were shaking from being so tired. Sarah hooked the conduit up to meet the power source, but only a small amount of energy flowed through it. The crystal took it in and then channeled it perfectly, spreading the power in a way that followed its fractal pattern. Sarah gasped when she saw the efficiency reading on the screen. Efficiency of 99.7%. Jax, our best human conductors, can only do 70%. That's why they're got tired, Jack said, a tired smile on his face. One down. There are still 247 main parts to go. The weeks all ran together. Jax fell into a rhythm, a dance of creation that took up all of his waking hours. Each part had its own set of problems. He had to carefully reactivate the dormant technology on the hull plates with their adaptive nanomachines without setting off their defense systems. He worked for 5 days to find a harmonic frequency that would gently wake up the nanomachine, like a mother's voice waking up a sleeping child. The propulsion system was a great example of how to use gravity to move things. It didn't push against space. Instead, it made tiny wormholes that pulled the ship forward by folding space itself. To fix it, you had to know physics at a level that most people had only just begun to understand. Jax wrote equations in 3 notebooks, worked with Sarah to, to simulate the gravitational fields, and almost caused a localized spatial anomaly that would have caused part of the station to collapse. Next time, could you please let me know before you bend space-time? Sarah had said, her voice shaking after that almost disaster. What's the fun in that? Jax had answered. Even though his hands were shaking, the weapon systems were especially worrisome. As Jax put each cannon, missile array, and a defensive system back together, he felt the weight of what he was making. It wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon of great destruction. If it got into wrong hands, it could take over worlds. One night when he couldn't sleep, he saw Sarah in the workshop looking at the energy cannon that was only partially put together. Can't sleep either? Jax asked, sitting next to her. I can't stop thinking about what this ship can do, Sarah said. We're bringing back something that could change the balance of power in the whole galaxy. What if we are wrong? For a long time, Jax was quiet. I think about that every day. But this is what I learned from the interferes. This ship wasn't made to conquer. It was made to keep people safe. The Zalosians built it to protect people, to stand between danger and the people who couldn't protect themselves. That was 300 years ago, Sarah said in response. People who use it now might have different reasons. You're right, Jack said. That's why we're not just fixing the ship. We're also putting in safety measures. Look at this. He pulled up the diagram on his datapad. I'm adding a command core that was designed by a person and needs special authorization codes. The ship won't fire a single shot without them. We're giving it strength and a sense of right and wrong. Sarah looked at the schematic and then nodded slowly. The coalition won't be happy about that. They want a weapon that they can completely control. Jack said firmly, the coalition is getting proof that people deserve a place at their table. After we get that seat, it's up to us what we do with it. But I won't make anything that could hurt people who haven't done anything wrong. The Zalosians died to protect something. This ship will carry on that legacy. The workshop had turned into a place of change by the 4th month. The pieces that were spread out were coming together. Power cores were connected to conduits. Hull plates that are attached to structural frameworks. Things that had been quiet for thousands of years started to hum with life. Jax had lost weight. His sleep schedule was all messed up, and he had scars from a dozen small accidents, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity. Every day brought new information and new ways of seeing things. He had made special tools for this job, like a sonic welder that could join alien metals without damaging them with heat, a quantum scanner that could read energy signatures through solid matter, and a gravitational clamp that could keep parts perfectly aligned while he worked. There were engineers from the coalition there to watch, and they were from a dozen different species. They watched in silence as Jax did what they thought was impossible. Some people were impressed. Some people were upset by how quickly people were making progress. How is he doing this? Jax heard one alien engineer ask Sarah. He listened to the ships, Sarah said simply. He doesn't just fix it, he knows how it works. Every day, that understanding grew stronger. Jack started to notice the different Zalosian engineers' unique signatures on the parts. One liked simple solutions that made systems that were beautiful in their simplicity. Another person liked redundancy and made backups for backups. A third had been brave and pushed the limits of what their technology could do. They were dead for a long time, but their work lived on, and Jax honored each one as he fixed their work. 5 months later, Jax did something amazing. He was able to fix an entire subsystem, the defensive shield generator. It was a small unit about the size of a human shuttle, but it had technology that people wouldn't be able to make on their own for hundreds of years. Are you ready for the test? Sarah asked, her voice full of excitement and nerves. Ready as we'll ever be, Jack said. He turned on the generator. Nothing happened for a while. Then, with a sound like thunder from far away, a field of shimmering energy burst out of the device. It drew outward, making a clear dome that covered the whole workshop bay. The energy levels were through the roof. The shield would have stopped anything that wasn't direct hit from a capital ship's main cannon, and it was just one part of a bigger whole. "We're really doing it," Sarah whispered, looking at the shield in awe. "We're bringing back a god." Jack looked at the shield and saw beauty in every shimmer of light that crossed it. "Not a god," he said softly. "Just a really amazing piece of engineering. But yes, we are doing it." He looked around the workshop at the growing vessel, the systems coming to life, and the proof of human will and creativity that was taking shape in front of him. And we're not done yet, not even close. In the 7th month, there was both victory and fear. The ship was starting to look like itself, not the whole ship. They didn't have all the parts they needed, but Jax had been able to put back together about 30% of the original warship, focusing on making one complete working section instead of a lot of smaller ones. It was in the biggest bay of New Terra Station, a huge building that was both alien and human in its beauty and strength. The hull shone with that impossible Zylocian alloy, which was now whole and fixed. The crystalline conduits were full of energy, and their light made shadows that danced. The propulsion core hummed with power that was almost too much to handle, and the defensive systems were ready. But the main reactor, which was the heart of it all, stayed quiet. Jack stood in front of the reactor chamber, which was a round room at the center of the ship. The reactor itself was a crystal sphere floating in the gravitational field and surrounded by dozens of energy conduits. When it was turned on, it would make a controlled singulatory that drew power from the fabric of the space-time itself. It was also the most dangerous part Jax had ever tried to fix. "Final systems check," Jax yelled. His voice echoed through the room. Sarah was at the main control station, which had holographic screens all around it. "Power lines are at 100% confirmed that the structure is sound. Gravitational stabilizers are now online. Systems for shutting down in an emergency are ready." A group of 30 human engineers and technicians stood by their station around them. The coalition had also sent observers, aliens from 7 different species who were all excited to see if humans could really do the impossible. Director Marcus Chen of the Coalition Special Projects Division, the man who had given Jax this chance, was watching from a safe room above the bay. Chen's dark eyes didn't show any emotions, but Jax knew that the director had put his career online for this project. "Dr. Krill, are you medical teams ready?" Jax asked, looking up at the room where people were watching. The Venari doctor answered through the comm system, her forearm moving to show that she was sure. "Mr. Miller, you should be ready for anything. I hope we don't have to use them." "Me too." Jax took a deep breath and stepped into the reactor chamber, wearing a specialized suit designed to protect against the energy surges that were about to occur. "Jax, you don't have to be in there," Sarah protested over the comm. "You can run the activation from here." "No, I can't," Jax replied, approaching the reactor. "This isn't just about pressing buttons in the right sequence. The reactor needs to be calibrated during its initial startup, and the calibration requires someone who understands how it feels, not just how it works." He placed his hand on the access panel. The interface recognized his biometric signature, one of the many human modifications he'd integrated into the ship's system. "Initiating startup sequence, stage 1, gravitational containment." Jax activated the first set of controls. The gravitational stabilizers hummed to life, creating an invisible field around the reactor core. Monitors showed the field forming perfectly, a sphere of wrapped space-time, ready to contain the forces about to be unleashed. Stage 2, energy priming. The conduits began to grow, feeding power into the reactor 1. The crystalline sphere started to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. Energy readings climbed steadily. Stage 3. Quantum initialization. This was the delicate part. Jax had to introduce a quantum fluctuation into the reactor core at precisely the right moment, creating the seed that would grow into a controlled singularity. Too early and the reaction would fizzle out. Too late and it would cascade out of control. Jax closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm of the ship around him. He'd spent 7 months living and breathing this technology. He knew its heartbeat, its pulse. He knew exactly when. Now, Jax whispered, activating the quantum initiator. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the reactor core blazed with light, so bright that the protective filters on everyone's visors activated automatically. The crystalline sphere spun faster and faster, becoming a blur of motion. Energy readings shot upward, climbing past human design limits, past anything the coalition species had achieved. But Jax wasn't done. The reactor was active, but it needed calibration. He moved around the chamber with practiced efficiency, adjusting conduit flow, fine-tuning gravitational fields, balancing the energy distribution with an artist's touch. The ship responded to his every adjustment. He could feel it coming alive around him, systems activating throughout the entire structure. It was like conducting an orchestra, bringing together dozens of different instruments into one harmonious whole. Power output at 70% and climbing. Farah reported, her voice tight with tension. Structural stress within acceptable parameters. Jax, it's working. But something was wrong. Jax felt it before the monitors registered it. A dissonance in the energy flow. A stuttering in the reactor's rhythm. One of the quantum stabilizers was off by a fraction of a percent. Not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to create cascading problem over time. I need to adjust that Theta 7 stabilizer, Jax called out. Negative. Director Chen's voice cut through the comm. That stabilizer is in the high radiation zone. If you enter now, you'll receive a lethal dose. If I don't adjust it, the reactor will become increasingly unstable, Jax countered. We could lose everything. That's an acceptable risk, Chen replied coldly. One person's life isn't worth. Jax didn't wait for him to finish. He moved towards the Theta 7 access port, ignoring the radiation warning flashing on his suit's display. Jax, don't! Sarah shouted. Trust me, Jax replied, his voice calm despite his racing heartbeat. He reached the stabilizer and opened the access panel. Radiation washed over him immediately. His suit's alarms screamed warnings. But Jax focused on the task, his hands steady as he made the adjustment. It took less than 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When he closed the panel and stepped back, the reactor's rhythm smoothed out. The dissonance vanished. Energy flow became perfect. Radiation exposure at the critical levels, Dr. Krell reported. Mr. Miller, you need immediate medical attention. In a minute, Jax replied, watching the reactor stabilize. Let me finish this first. He made his way back to the center of the chamber, completing the final calibrations. The reactor reached full power. The singularity stable and contained. Energy flowed to the ship like blood through veins, bringing every system to life. Throughout the structure, lights blazed. Defensive shields activated, creating shimmering curtains of protective energy. The propulsion core reached operational status, ready to fold space at moment's command. Weapon systems powered up, the targeting arrays searching for threats that didn't exist. And most importantly, the ship's central intelligence, the fragment of consciousness that had been dormant for 3,000 years, died. Jax felt it through his neural interface, a presence that was alien yet somehow familiar. The ship was aware, not fully conscious, not in the way human understood consciousness, but aware of its own existence, its purpose, its rebirth. Hello, Jax whispered, placing his hand on the wall of the reactor chamber. Welcome back. A pulse of energy ran through the ship, an acknowledgement. The lights dimmed and brightened in a pattern that might have a greeting. Power output at 98%, Sarah reported, her voice filled with wonder. All systems operational. Jax, you did it. You actually did it. The observational room erupted in chaos, cheers, from the human engineers, stunned silence from the alien observers, and something that might have been respect from Director Chen. But Jax barely heard them. He was dizzy, his vision blurring. The radiation exposure was catching up to him. He tried to take a step forward, the exit, and collapsed instead. Jax! Sarah's scream was the last thing he heard before darkness claimed him. Jax walked to the sterile white ceiling of the New Terra Station medical bay. Every muscle in his body ached, and his mouth tasted like metal. But he was alive. "Welcome back to the land of living," a familiar voice said. Jax turned his head slowly, because even that small movement hurt to find Sarah sitting beside his bed. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. "How long was I out?" Jax asked, his voice rough. 4 days. Dr. Krill said you received enough radiation to kill 3 normal people. Fortunately, you're too stubborn to die. Jax managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "The ship, the reactor, still running perfectly. You balanced everything so precisely that it hasn't needed a single adjustment since you collapsed. The collision, observers are calling it a miracle." Sarah's smile faded. "But, Jax, you can't do things like that. Rushing into a radiation zone without proper protection, you could have died." "But I didn't," Jax pointed out. "And if I hadn't fixed that stabilizer, you would have lost the reactor. Maybe the entire ship. That would have been 7 months of work down the drain." 7 months can be repeated. You can't." Jax met her eyes, seeing the genuine concern there. Sarah had started as his apprentice, but over these months, she'd become something more. A partner, a friend, someone who understood his passion for work. "I'm sorry I scared you," he said, quietly. "But you know me, Sarah. When I see a problem that needs fixing, I can't just walk away." "I know. It's what makes you brilliant and infuriating in equal measure." She stood up, checking his vital monitors. "Dr. Krill says you'll need another week of treatment before you're fully recovered. But there's someone who wants to talk to you." Director Chen entered the room, his expression unreadable. He was a tall man with graying hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent his life in military service before joining the coalition administration. "Mr. Miller," Chen said, nodding respectfully. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a cargo fighter? But I'll live." "Yes, you will. Thanks to Dr. Krell's expertise and some very expensive medical treatments." Chen pulled up a chair. "What you did was reckless, dangerous, and completely against protocol." Jax waited for the inevitable reprimand. "It was also exactly what the situation required," Chen continued, surprising him. "I've been an engineer myself, Mr. Miller. I know that sometimes the manual goes out of the window. You have to trust your instincts. You saved the project. So we're good. We're better than good. The Coalition Council has been informed of your success. They're eager to see the completed vessel." Chen leaned forward. "But I need to ask you something important. That ship out there, you've been inside its mind. You felt how it thinks. What is it?" Jax considered the question carefully. "It's a guardian. The Xylosians built it to protect, not to conquer. It has weapons, yes, but they're defensive in nature. It's designed to stand between danger and those who need defending. Can it be controlled? By someone it trusts? Yes, but it won't blindly follow orders. I've made sure of that. The ship has limited autonomy, the ability to refuse commands that violate the core purpose." Chen frowned. "The Council won't like that. They were accepting a weapon they could fully control. Then they'll be disappointed," Jack said firmly. "I didn't spend 7 months rebuilding the ship just so it could be used for conquest. The Xylosians created something noble. It won't pervert that." For a long moment, Chen studied him. Then the director smiled. A real smile, not the diplomatic mask Jax usually saw on politicians. "Good, because that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. The galaxy has enough weapons, Mr. Miller. It needs more guardians." Chen stood. "Rest up. You've earned it. And when you've recovered, we need to discuss the ship's future." After Chen left, Jack spent his recovery time studying reports. on the ship's performance. Every system was operating at peak efficiency. The adaptive armor had already begun, learning from stimulation drills, becoming more resistant to various types of damage. The propulsion core could fold space in ways that would let the ship adapting cross star systems in days rather than weeks. But what fascinated Jack was most was the ship's intelligence. It was learning and growing, not in the way a human learned, but in its own unique way. It was curious about its new creators, studying the humans who worked on and around it. On the fifth day of his recovery, something unexpected happens. Jax was reviewing sensor data when his neural interface activated on its own. The ship was reaching out to him, initiating contact. Images flooded his mind, not words or language, but concepts, feelings, memories. The ship remembered its past, the battles it had fought, the worlds it had protected, the Zalosian crew who had served abroad it, honor and courage. It remembered its death, the terrible weapon that had overwhelmed its defenses, the pain of systems failing, the sorrow of the duty unfulfilled, and then nothing. 3,000 years of darkness, until a human with gentle hands and a curious mind had found it, until Jax had given it a second chance, a new purpose. The ship wanted him to know it was grateful. More than that, it wanted him to know it chose him. Not the coalition, not Earth's military, but Jax Miller. It would follow his guidance, trust his judgment, protect what he valued. Tears streamed down Jack's face as the connection faded. He'd repaired countless machines in his life, but this was different. This wasn't just a machine, it was a being, ancient and powerful, and it had chosen to trust him. It won't let you down, Jax whispered. I promise. By the time he was released from medical care, Jax had made his decision. He found Director Chen in his office overlooking the bay where the ship rested. I needed to make a request, Jax said. Name it. The ship needs a crew. Not just any crew. People who understand what it is, what it represents. People who use its powers responsibly. Jax took a deep breath. I want to captain it. Chen raised an eyebrow. You're an engineer, not a military officer. I'm the person the ship trusts. I'm the one who understands how it thinks, how it feels. Anyone else would just be pushing buttons. I can actually work with it as a partner. You realize what you're asking? To captain a god-tier warship is to hold the power to change the fate of nations. The responsibility would be immense. I know. But I also know that if someone else takes command, there's chance they'll misuse that power. The ship won't let them. It has safeguards, but the conflict would damage both the crew and the ship itself. Jax met Chen's eyes steadily. I built it. I understand it. I'm the right choice. Chen was quiet for a long time, staring out at the massive vessel. Finally he nodded. I'll recommend it to the council. But Jax, if they approve this, your life will never be the same. You'll be responsible for more than just a ship. You'll be a symbol of what humanity can achieve, and a target for everyone who fears or envies the achievement. I understand. Do you? Because once you step onto that command deck, there's no going back to your quiet workshop. No more being the ghost whisperer, working in obscurity. You'll be visible, scrutinized, and judged by the entire galaxy. Jax thought about his workshop, about the peace of working with his hand, about the simple satisfaction of fixing broken things. He'd miss that. But some things were more important than personal comfort. The ship needs me, he said simply. That's all that matters. Jen smiled. You know, when I first recruited you for this project, I thought you were just a talented engineer with an ego problem. I was wrong. You're something much rarer. Someone who actually cares more about doing right than doing well. Is there a difference? There is, and most people never learn it. You already knew. Jen extended his hand. Welcome abroad, Captain. Miller? Jack shook his hand, feeling the weight of the title settle on his shoulders. Captain. He'd spent his life fixing things, and now he'd fix something that would change the course of human history. One more thing, Jack said. I want Sarah Carter as my chief engineer. Already approved. I figured you'd ask. That night, Jack stood alone in the ship's reactor chamber, the same place where he'd nearly died to bring this vessel back to life. The crystalline sphere pulsed steadily, its rhythm like a heartbeat. We're in this together now, Jack said to the ship. You and me, and whatever crew we can find that's worthy of serving abroad. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise you this. I'll honor your purpose. We'll protect those who need protecting. We'll stand against those who would do harm. We'll be what Xylosians meant for you to be. The lights throughout the ship pulsed in response, an acknowledgement, an agreement, a partnership forged between species separated by 3,000 years, brought together by one human who refused to accept that anything was impossible. Captain Jack Miller placed his hand on the wall, feeling the pulse of energy beneath his palm, and smiled. The real journey was just beginning.